Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tackling something literally every single one of us deals with: money. Specifically, we're unpacking a really fascinating biblical perspective on wealth management. We're going to break down a recent teaching by Pastor Huzi Shing, who actually draws on theologian John MacArthur's deep dive into the book of Matthew. Now, I know what you might be thinking. It's an ancient text, right? But as you'll see, it has some surprisingly sharp, relevant applications for our modern wallets, our careers, and even our investment portfolios. So let's dive right in. To really understand everything we're going to discuss today, we have to start right here with Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 and 20. This teaching from Jesus sets up this massive central paradox: earthly decay versus heavenly permanence. Think about it. On Earth, wealth is incredibly fragile, isn't it? It can literally be eaten by moths, destroyed by rust, or just straight up stolen. But heavenly treasure? That remains perfectly 100% secure. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with where is your treasure? Then the biblical view of wealth, 4 financial principles, investing versus speculating, and finally, health and money. Let's get to it. Section 1, where is your treasure? Pastor Huzi Shing kicks things off by asking us to take a hard look at our everyday attitude toward money. Really, what is money's ultimate purpose in your life? The text is essentially urging us to stop pouring all our energy into earthly treasures simply because they are so vulnerable. It doesn't matter how much you stockpile, earthly wealth is always subject to corruption, sudden economic downturns, or, literal theft. Heavenly treasures, on the flip side, are investments in spiritual and eternal realities that absolutely cannot be compromised. Moving right along to Section 2, the biblical view of wealth. Okay, so when people hear the phrase, "don't store up treasures," they often jump to some pretty massive misconceptions, like, should we not have savings accounts? But John MacArthur points out a super crucial linguistic context here. The original word used for storing up implies this sort of compulsive stacking, accumulating, or hoarding. It's describing wealth that isn't being put to any active, proper use. It's just being piled up, often just so the person can show off. So the warning here is really against an arrogant, hoarding mentality, not the mere fact of having money in the bank. So, we have to separate myth from reality on this one. The myth? That the Bible teaches absolute poverty is the only way to be truly spiritual. But the reality is actually quite different. The scriptures fully acknowledge your right to own personal wealth, to have land, and to hold possessions. The major caveat here is simply that they must be acquired righteously, through honest means. The teaching suggests that God actually wants his people to enjoy the material blessings he provides. To back this up, the pastor points straight to 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17. This verse is specifically addressing those who are already wealthy. And notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't command them to go and abandon all their wealth. Instead, it commands them not to be arrogant, and this is the big one, not to put their hope in their wealth. Because, let's face it, wealth is deeply uncertain. The actual mandate is to rely on God rather than relying on a fragile bank account. All right, Section 3, 4 financial principles. Building on that theology, the pastor outlines a super practical framework for managing your everyday finances. It's broken down into 4 pillars. Step 1, honest work. Step 2, sincere tithing. Step 3, wise management. And Step 4, generous charity. The idea is that if you can balance these 4 areas, you are effectively storing up those heavenly treasures. Let's break each of these down. Principle 1 is that honest work is sacred. And the pastor makes a really beautiful point here. It doesn't matter if you are using your mind in a crisp, air-conditioned office, or if you're sweating it out on a hot construction site or a farm. All legitimate labor is considered sacred. Earning a fair wage for an honest day's work, that is the absolute foundational step. Then we hit Principle 2, sincere tithing. Now, this is framed not as some sort of mandatory tax, but as a very tangible way to express reverence to God. It goes way beyond just calculating a strict percentage. It's really about making a willing, grateful offering to support the needs of God's kingdom. It's an intentional way of saying, hey, I recognize exactly where my blessings actually come from. Which brings us to Section 4, investing versus speculating. This ties right into Principle 3, wise management. And this part is so nuanced, it actually gets its own dedicated focus. The teaching draws this really sharp, very modern contrast between wise investing and foolish speculation. True investing means you actually understand the company you're putting your money into, right? You know its operations, you know where your dividends are coming from. Speculating, on the other hand, is described as blindly chasing derivative numbers, like highly volatile ETFs, without having a clue what's actually backing them. The pastor warns that this is basically just a gambler's mentality. He even points out the deep hypocrisy of it. When a stock shoots up, the gambler thanks God. But when it inevitably crashes, man, they bitterly complain to him. And finally, we have principle 4, generous charity. If you've worked honestly, given faithfully, and managed your resources wisely, you're going to be in a position to be generous. But the biblical catch here is to do it quietly. You shouldn't be out there seeking public applause for it. It's like the famous phrase goes, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. True charity is genuine and it's discreet.
Last but not least, Section 5, Health and Money.
As the pastor wraps up his message, he zooms out for a profound reflection on the entire life cycle of our wealth. And he points out this incredibly tragic irony that plagues so many of us today. Think about it. In our years of youth, we push ourselves to the absolute limit. We work endless overtime, we pull all-nighters, and we literally sacrifice our physical health just to hoard up numbers in a bank account. But then we reach old age. And what do? We take all that hoarded money and desperately spend it in hospitals, trying to buy back the very health we willingly threw away. So I want to leave you with this final, totally provocative question directly from the teaching. Are you sacrificing your health to gain wealth, only to turn around later and use that very same wealth to try and buy back your health? Because you certainly can't take earthly wealth with you. By viewing money through a lens of honest work, wise management, and quiet generosity, the teaching argues we can avoid this trap entirely. It all comes down to being a wise steward of absolutely everything you have, your money and your life. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this gives you a powerful new perspective on where your true treasure lies.